All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, as we are discussing the premier conference in all of college football on this podcast, with the upcoming college football season right around the bend, the big question is going to be, will anybody in the Southeastern Conference be able to knock off Alabama and Nick Saban? You look at the dominance that the Crimson Tide program has had on the gridiron since St. Nick took over, and you look at it just fast forwarding right now. They, of course, Alabama will enter this season as the defending national champions, and they've also won the SEC in 5 out of the last 6 years. And when you think about Alabama under Nick Saban, it's all about keeping the machinery rolling. Even when you lose parts, you just reassemble. I say that because offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian is now the head football coach at Texas. So what do you do if you're Nick Saban? You go out there and you get former Penn State head coach as well as former Houston Texans head coach Bill O'Brien, and now he's going to be calling the plays for this Bama offense. And that's important to have a seasoned play caller out there because now it's the Bryce Young show at quarterback. And of course, he had limited action last year behind Mac Jones at quarterback. And now Bryce Young is a sophomore. You know what? He gets the keys to this Ferrari, and it's all about what he can do for this Alabama team. There's plenty of talent on offense around Bryce Young. As the bottom line is, Nick Saban keeps quality first round talent coming in at the skill positions for Alabama. You look at junior wide receiver John Mechie III. He looks like he can be that next big time playmaker at wide receiver for Bama. Defensively, Alabama was a little young last year, and they still went out there and went undefeated and won it all. But you look, they have more depth this year. I look at outside linebacker Christian Harris. You look at the hybrid man playing defensive end and linebacker and Will Anderson Jr., along with senior outside linebacker Christopher Allen. And then you look at this secondary led by Malachi Moore. The bottom line is Alabama. They won last year and they have the potential to be better. You look at it right now. Of course, everybody wants to see Alabama in their first game of the season at the Mercedes-Benz Dome on September 4th when they take on the Miami Hurricanes out of the ACC. But you look at some of the big matchups for Alabama when the SEC schedule begins. At Florida on September 18th, they're at Texas A&M on October 9th, and then they host LSU on November 6th. But the bottom line is Alabama, more than any other program in the nation, is always up for the big primetime challenges. These are the type of players that Nick Saban recruits and gets at Alabama. The guys who not only are not afraid of the spotlight on the college football scene, but also guys who have the potential to go out there and succeed in the National Football League. So the bottom line is Alabama is once again going to be in that mix to win the SEC. You look at the Bayou Bengals, and they're going to be looking to bounce back this year. Of course, LSU only went 5-5 last year after they won the national title in 2019. And for Coach Ed Orgeron, is it going to be sophomore Max Johnson, or is it going to be the true freshman Grant Nussmeier at quarterback? We'll have to wait and see. But nonetheless, LSU, they have a proud tradition of their running backs, and I expect junior running back Tyrion Davis-Price to add his name to that legacy as ball carriers for Louisiana State. You look at sophomore wide receiver Kashawn Butte, who is looking to, build off of a strong freshman campaign. And I think he has the potential to be an impact player for the Tigers this year. Defensively for LSU, junior cornerback Derek Stingley Jr., who definitely won't have to wait that long next spring to hear his name called at the NFL draft. This guy has already taken home a lot of individual hardware, and along with sophomore cornerback Eli Ricks, they have the potential to be the best cornerback duo, not only in the SEC, but in the nation. You look at LSU, and typically when you think about LSU, they always have a difficult schedule. That will not change this year. LSU goes west to begin the season on September 4th at UCLA. Won't be an easy game because that Bruins team under head coach Chip Kelly is looking to make some strides here in 2021. And then when it comes on to conference play for LSU, it's all about their revenge tour at Mississippi State on September 25th. Remember, the Bulldogs went to Baton Rouge and beat LSU in the first game of the season last year. They host Auburn on October 2nd, and Auburn really took LSU behind the woodshed last year and embarrassed them at a Jordan Hare. At Kentucky on October 9th, they host Florida on October 16th. They're at Alabama on November 6th, which will not be an easy game. And then they finish up at home versus Texas A&M. So LSU, even though they're looking to bounce back, they might have arguably the toughest schedule in the SEC. Now you look at the East. And for Florida, they're looking to win this conference for the first time since 2008. Of course, they got to the SEC championship game last year. They only lost to Alabama by 6 points, but the bottom line is there's no consolation prize for that. Dan Mullen has gotten the Gators back to what they were under Urban Meyer and, of course, under Steve Spurrier as well. Last year was the first time since Dan Mullen came back that Florida did not win at least 10 games, but nonetheless, the Gators were once again in the mix to win the SEC, and I think that will once again be the case here in 2021. No longer Kyle Trask at quarterback, as Mullen is going to look to Emory Jones, and Jones got some reps last year, so I expect him to really, have an opportunity to step in and look to be the guy for Mullen and this offense this time around. Senior running back Damian Pierce can have an impact, while junior wide receiver Jacob Copeland really has a step up because Florida lost so much in their passing game last year. Of course, Kyle Pitts is now in the NFL, as is Kadarius Toney. So somebody else has to step up on the outside and be that big play threat in the passing game for this Gators attack to keep on moving. Defensively for Florida, in my book, senior middle linebacker Ventrell Miller is definitely going to be in the mix to be a Butkus Award candidate. You look at defensive end Zachary Carter, one of the best pass rushers in the SEC. And for the Gators, they got to find a way to survive the SEC East. Not an easy schedule conference-wise for Florida. Their conference opener is at home versus Alabama on September 18th. They're at Kentucky on October 2nd, and Kentucky is always a tough team under Mark Stoops. They're at LSU on October 16th, and following their bye, of course, it's their annual matchup with Georgia in Jacksonville. Speaking of the Dogs, they're looking to win the SEC for the second time in 5 years. Four straight top 10 finishes under head football coach Kirby Smart, and they're looking to keep that trend going in Athens. Junior quarterback JT Daniels really made the transition from coming in from USC last year and had a solid impact for this Georgia offense. And he's looking to take his game to another level here in 2021. I talked about LSU with their running tradition. You look at Georgia, and their running back tradition is second to none. And I think Zamir White definitely adds his name to that this year as well. The Gators had the 12th best, Georgia rather, had the 12th best defense in the nation last year. And they're once again going to be tough. You look at linebackers, N'Kobe Dean, as well as Adam Anderson. And, for me, when you think about Georgia, even before with Mark Richt, and I think even more now with Kirby Smart, it's all about that physicality that the Dogs, please forgive me, Georgia fans, for keeps talking about the Gators. Just got them on my brain right now. But the thing is, it's like when you think about Georgia, it's all about the physicality that they bring to the table on defense. And that, once again, is going to give them an opportunity to compete for an SEC crown here in 2021. Now, Georgia, they always play a tough schedule as well. They're going to begin the season in Charlotte versus Clemson, which is not going to be an easy game. I'm sure that there are going to be some Georgia fans that will make the trek from Athens to Charlotte, but nonetheless, that's going to be a pro-Clemson crowd that the Dogs are going to have to deal with. Of course, their annual meeting in Jacksonville with Florida in a contest that more than likely is going to decide who wins the SEC East. And luckily for Georgia, unlike Florida, Georgia avoids all of the big heavyweights that the SEC West has. So no Alabama, no LSU, no A&M. They do have to deal with Auburn, but this is a rebuilding year for Auburn. So that is definitely going to give Georgia a better opportunity to get out of the SEC East and potentially win the conference outright. You look at Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher, and of course, no more Kellen Mond at quarterback as he's going with redshirt freshman Haynes King. But for me, this is a very important year for the Aggies because we've heard about the news with Texas and Oklahoma set to join the SEC in a couple of years. And of course, about 10 years ago when Texas A&M left the Big 12 for the SEC, it was one of those where they tried to get away from Texas and Oklahoma, especially Texas, because people always look at them as the little brother to the Longhorns. So I think it's important for Texas A&M to go out there and have a solid year and, keep their status going. And I say that from the standpoint because you don't want to get lost in the shuffle if you are the Aggies in the SEC, especially the SEC West, where it is already so difficult with the likes of Alabama and LSU. We're talking about the last two national championships coming out of that division, more or less that conference overall. You look at it, some other teams to keep an eye on. It's a new year and a new look for Auburn under Brian Harsin. For so long, of course, Gus Malzahn was the head coach at Auburn, and he was dismissed. He's now at UCF. But Brian Harsin comes in from Boise State, and things are a little bit different in Auburn than they are at Boise. So I think Brian Harsin has to get adjusted to the SEC very quick, and it probably could be baptism by fire. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Mississippi and Mississippi State are each looking to improve. Of course, Ole Miss has Lane Kiffin as their head coach, and Mississippi State has Mike Leach. Two big name coaches that are looking to establish themselves in the toughest division or toughest conference, rather, there is in college football. So the bottom line is you got to go out there and win the games that you're supposed to. But if you're Mississippi and Mississippi State, respectively, you got to go out there and try to pull off some upsets, or definitely pull off some upsets if you're going to get that respect in the conference. I look at Missouri as this team could really be a sleeper in this conference in year two under the Eli Drinkwitz regime. Sophomore quarterback Connor Bazeliak is looking to build off of a solid freshman campaign. Four seniors on the offensive line for Missouri. You also look at senior running back Tyler Beatty, as well as hybrid defensive end / outside linebacker Trajan Jeffcoat defensively. So nonetheless, you look at the Tigers right now, and they don't have a hard schedule. So I think Missouri can go out there and take care of their business in the games that they're supposed to win. And I think they're going to give Georgia and Florida problems in the East. Not saying Missouri's going to win the East, but they're not going to make it easy for the Gators or the Dogs. Speaking of not making it easy for Georgia or Florida, you think about Kentucky, and Kentucky's always tough under head football coach Mark Stoops. Very solid on the defensive side of the ball. You love the physicality that they play with. And, they make you earn every single yard that you get against them defensively. And 2021 is going to be no different from that, which is going to allow Kentucky to hang around somewhat in that race in the SEC East. You look at Tennessee, they're starting over once again. Their seventh different head coach since 2009, as is now Josh Heupel. Of course, he won a national championship as a starting quarterback with Oklahoma in 2000. He comes to Knoxville, formerly as a head football coach at UCF. But Tennessee needs some sustainability at the head coaching position. For so long, it was navigated by Philip Fulmer. And when you think about Tennessee in the 1990s, they were one of the premier programs in college football. They have really gotten away from that. They've gotten lost in the shuffle. And, for my money, I can tell you personally that Neyland Stadium in Knoxville, on a Saturday afternoon when Tennessee is good, is rocking. That is not the case right now. There are plenty of Tennessee fans out there that want to come and pour their hearts out and support this team. And there are still plenty of Tennessee fans that do support this team. But nonetheless, they want to see this team compete with Georgia and Florida for the SEC East title. They want to see this team compete with Alabama for the SEC crown because, again, the third Saturday in October, once upon a time, was the game in the SEC. That is no longer the case. And the only way that Tennessee is going to do it, they got to get sustainability. They have some great facilities, but the bottom line is they've got to get the kids there. They need that sustainability at the head coaching position, and hopefully Josh Heupel can provide them with that. Shane Beamer is entering his first year as a head football coach in South Carolina, and he has a tough task ahead of him trying to keep his head above water in this tough SEC. You look at Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, another difficult job, and then Sam Pittman at Arkansas, who's trying to establish his program there. So those three coaches, they really have their work cut out for them because this conference is so deep. I mean, you look at it. From top to bottom, especially in the West, you could have a team that could go 7-5 in the West, and they could probably be one of the top teams in a lot of other conferences in the nation. But it just gives you an idea. I mean, having to deal with A&M, LSU, Alabama, and Auburn every year, if you're Mississippi, Mississippi State, and Arkansas, respectively, is very difficult. So that just gives you an idea of the depth of this conference. The East is not as strong as the West, but that doesn't mean that the road over there is a lot easier when you think about having to deal with Georgia, Florida, Kentucky. Missouri should be an improving team this year, just to give you an idea of that. So it's a gauntlet, and you earn every single win. I still think that there's a gap between Alabama and everybody else in this conference. Alabama will get out of the West. I think Georgia survives in the East. I think Georgia's a little bit better than Florida this year, and I think that that contest on October 30th will decide who is going to win the SEC East. Florida won the contest last year, and they went on to win the East. This time around, I think it could be Georgia facing Alabama in the SEC championship game. But the bottom line is, I simply do not, and I repeat, do not see anybody in the SEC slowing down Alabama. This team is always in contention for the national championship. They were a focused and determined team last year under head coach Nick Saban. And I know that, of course, like it is every year in Tuscaloosa, there are players who leave school early for the NFL draft. They're taken early in the NFL draft, and typically Saban loses coaches to other head coaching positions around college football. But nonetheless, he knows how to bring more quality coaches in there to work for him. He knows how to find the quality players to play for him. And that is why Alabama is not only the premier program of the SEC, it is one of the premier programs of college football. So you ask yourself, who's going to slow down Alabama in the Southeastern Conference this year? And the bottom line is nobody. It's their conference to lose. Nick Saban will have them ready for every single challenge that will be put in front of them, as the tide will continue to roll over the SEC. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take the time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.